Latrice Cunningham. The crimes these two committed are disturbing in every sense of the word. Butts and Cunningham were responsible for the abuse and death of innocent 3-year-old Serenity Richardson in South Carolina. Butts was Serenity's godmother and her mother's best friend, and was in a romantic relationship with Cunningham at the time of the abuse. In 2009, little Serenity walked through the doors of the Butts-Cunningham household expecting to receive loving care and protection, but instead, horrifically, she encountered a shocking scene of physical and emotional abuse, an especially extreme case of child maltreatment, as described by prosecuting attorney Elizabeth Gordon. Butts and Cunningham incessantly beat her with a belt and plastic coat hangers, lacerating every inch of her body, leaving no part of her unscathed except for the soles of her feet. Unfortunately, it didn't end there. As Serenity drew her last breaths, the women ferociously tried to revive her with bleach to her nose and an icy bath. It was a futile attempt. Outrage and shock swept the nation following news of Butts' cruel actions, as she was the child's godmother who failed to fulfill her obligations. Butts and Cunningham pled guilty to the charges and were subsequently sentenced in 2011 to life imprisonment without any opportunity for parole. Wait till you see how they reacted to their sentence. As the court pronounced their fate, despair swept through the courtroom. Butts and Cunningham fell on the floor, screaming in panic. While justice was served, it is impossible to erase Serenity's and her loved ones' anguish and suffering. And the same applies to innocent 21-year-old Nathan Potter, who was untimely killed by Shondell Jackson. This is Shondell Jackson.
Because he's the one who told police that Shondell was hiding down in Mississippi. He calls the sentence against his nephew fair.
When Jackson was convicted of the first-degree intentional killing and robbery of Nathan Potter, a 21-year-old University of Wisconsin student, he was only 19. As Potter walked home to his flat, Jackson and his partner, 20-year-old Derek Thomas, attempted to rob him. Since Potter didn't have any money on him, Jackson and Thomas murdered him. During the trial, Shondell showed exactly how evil he is. Throughout the trial, Jackson displayed a remarkable lack of guilt or grief for the victim's death or his crime. He smirked and yelled obscenities at the family. He even smiled at Potter's family as he was led out of the courtroom.
February conviction, when Jackson gestured to the Potter family several times, cursed at them, and as he was led out of court, our camera caught him smiling at the victim's family.
At the trial, Potter's father, John Potter, addressed Judge Rebecca Dowlett, requesting a penalty commensurate with the horrible crime, and wondered aloud to the courtroom.
There's nothing that can be said to bring back our Nathan. Is there such thing as pure evil?
Notwithstanding Jackson's lack of remorse, Judge Rebecca Dowlett showed no sympathy when she sentenced him to life in jail without the possibility of release. However, things turned violent when Jackson realized that his life as a free man was over. He cursed at the judge.
Jackson to life imprisonment without possibility for extended supervision. I know that that is something that is reserved for the most serious of cases, and
Police in the courtroom had to act swiftly to subdue him and even used pepper spray to do so. While the police struggled to stop him, his family joined the drama, confirming the suspicion that Jackson learned his bad behavior from home. The family members yelled at the victim's family, with one woman screaming how she hated them. The incident was shocking, and many viewers were surprised by Jackson's lack of remorse and violent reaction. When a convict is visibly upset and has a tantrum in court after hearing they're getting punished for the crimes they committed, a sense of relief rushes over me, knowing they can complain and argue all they want, but they will never overturn the ruling. A similar outburst occurred in the trial of Adrian Dunn, but not in the way you would expect. This is Adrian Dunn.
Rakeem Charles was shot to death by Adrian Dunn during what police say was a drug deal that didn't go as planned.
On July 16, 2012, Dunn met 24-year-old Rakeem Tariq Charles at a remote part of a street for what the authorities called a drug deal. Unfortunately, it didn't go as they had planned. Dunn, who had been in and out of prison, shot and killed Charles. Prosecutors claim that Dunn's criminal history substantially influenced his sentence. He'd already served time in prison for possessing a firearm, had committed another shooting before the murder, and showed no remorse for his conduct. Prosecutor Jason Goss grasped Charles's mother's hand and pleaded with the jury for a life sentence, adding, "So that nobody like her son has to suffer, and his family has to suffer because of the defendant."
There will never be somebody like her son who has to suffer, and this family who has to suffer because of the defendant. And that's why we're asking you for a life sentence.
Dunn's defense attorney, on the other hand, contended that a reduced sentence of 35 to 40 years in jail would be more suitable. He reasoned that it would give Dunn an opportunity to change his life and become a valuable member of the community if he ever came out of prison. The judge didn't agree. Dunn received a life sentence after the jury deliberated for almost 2 hours. During the trial, Dunn showed no remorse and acted as if he did nothing wrong. But once he heard that he would no longer be a free man, he lost his cool.
A sentence prosecutors argued that is justified by Dunn's criminal record.
He shouted obscenities and curses at the judge, and several Bexar County Sheriff's deputies had to remove him from the court. Although dramatic, Dunn's reaction to his sentence was slight compared to Diana Lovejoy's. This is Diana Lovejoy. In what the authorities described as an attempted murder plan, Lovejoy and her firearms instructor, Weldon McDavid, were in court for a murder-for-hire plot. The incident occurred in September 2016, as Lovejoy and Mulvihill finalized their bitter divorce and custody fight over their son. Assistant District Attorney Jody Breton contended that Lovejoy duped McDavid into the shooting by fabricating abuse allegations. Each disputed the existence of a murder-for-hire scheme during the hearing. Lovejoy sobbed as she told the judge that she could never take her son's father away from him. The prosecutor, on the other hand, described Lovejoy as manipulative, narcissistic, and totally self-absorbed, claiming that Lovejoy will go to any length. Lovejoy alleged that her husband had sexually abused her and their children when the pair divorced in the summer of 2014. Mulvihill was initially granted supervised visits by the family court, but following an investigation, the court granted him shared custody. The shooting happened as the couple was settling their custody battle. After hearing Lovejoy and McDavid speak, the prosecutor told the judge that the defendants were blaming others and demonstrating no accountability for their acts. Mulvihill, who has custody of his kid, appeared in court but did not speak and left immediately after his ex-wife was sentenced. For conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder, Lovejoy received a sentence of 26 years to life in jail, while Weldon McDavid Jr. was sentenced to 50 years to life for shooting the victim, Greg Mulvihill, who survived the incident. Immediately, when Lovejoy heard the word guilty, she slowly placed her head on the table and passed out.
Find the defendant, Weldon K. McDavid, guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
We're going to need to take a break.
She had to be stretchered out of the court and into a waiting ambulance. While Lovejoy may collapse at the announcement of a life sentence, wait till you hear about Michael Swanson's crime and how he reacts to a well-deserved life behind bars. This is Michael Swanson.
Verdict number 1, we, in the first degree, sign foreperson.
Swanson, from Twin Cities, was on trial for the murder of 2 women in Iowa. Michael Swanson was 18 at the time of the deaths and admitted to shooting 2 store workers during a November 2010 robbery spree. He was convicted of first-degree murder and first-degree robbery and the killing of Sheila Myers, and later pleaded guilty to Vicki Bowman's murder. During the sentence, the victims' family members made impassioned victim impact statements about how the death of their loved ones had affected their lives. Rhonda Myers, Sheila Myers' daughter, stated that her mother was her best friend and missed her daily. Jillian Bowman, Vicki Bowman's daughter, attacked Swanson during the second hearing and labeled him a coward for killing her mother. Swanson had stormed into the convenience store, demanded smokes and money, and then shot her mother in the face, she said. Bowman questioned how somebody could gain power by murdering a vulnerable woman and labeled Swanson weak. Swanson smiled throughout the hearing, but the judge quickly shut him down, telling him that his demeanor was inappropriate for the situation.
Cold-blooded murder, young man. And your counsel wants us to believe that you lack the capacity, that you were insane. And there is no place for you in an open, law-abiding society. Prison for the rest of your life.
The judge labeled Swanson evil and sentenced him to life in prison for both killings. He will also have to pay $150,000 in compensation to the Myers family. Though there were arguments over his mental health issues, it didn't affect the sentencing. When Swanson heard his sentence, he only smiled. Apart from Swanson, another convict that acted without remorse and was harshly dramatic in court was Jeremy Christian. This is Jeremy Christian.
Take your mask off and debate. That's why I'm here. This is my soapbox. Portland, Oregon, the Northwest. We got Supreme Court rulings for our freedom of speech.
Christian was behind the fatal knife assault on a MAX train on May 26, 2017, in Portland, Oregon. During a hate-fueled assault, Christian stabbed 2 men to death and injured another. During the trial, more than a dozen of Christian's victims and victims' relatives spoke to the court. Micah Fletcher, who survived the attack, talked about how his life has changed since then, including nightmares and gauging the safety of those around him. Victims and their families stressed the importance of systemic reform and the abolition of racism in society. Christian was allowed to speak at the court and appeared sad and tearful at times, but he did not accept responsibility for his acts.
My intention was not to murder or kill your family member. I'm glad that you can forgive me for the fact that happened on that day. I don't ask for forgiveness, but I'm glad that you found forgiveness.
Instead, he blamed Fletcher for the stabbings and denied targeting the 2 teenage girls with hate speech. Christian called his trial a farce and claimed he was wrongly labeled a racist. He also stated that he was sorry for the deaths, but not for his actions. Christian was barred from entering the courtroom later after threatening one of the victims. Although Christian's attorneys argued that the maximum punishment he could receive was life in prison with a 30-year minimum, the judge thought otherwise. Christian was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms by Multnomah County Circuit Judge Cheryl Albrecht, 1 for each of the first-degree murders, plus more than 25 years for other such offenses, such as the attempted first-degree murder of Fletcher, hate crimes, and assault. Christian did not show any reaction to the sentence, as he had cursed the judge and threatened one of the victim's relatives for her choice of words in her victim's impact statement.
You are a waste of breath, and when you die and go to hell, I hope you rot.
See you there.
Now, hey.
Go back to Tennessee, too.
What do I tell you?
Go back to Tennessee, too.
You can,
We don't want you here. All your race-baiting bullshit. You ain't gonna be mayor either. You ain't gonna be mayor either. George Floyd! George Floyd!
These convicts tried their best to prove their innocence. But what happened when this convict argued her breasts were too